Hi guys, welcome to the unboxing video for the Feiyu-Tech G4 3-axis handheld gimbal. Now the G4 gimbal has come out quite quickly after its baby brother, the G3 Ultra. Some people have been a little bit surprised on that, and obviously I'm hoping to answer some questions in regards to functionality and sort of the changes that have been made. Basically the main thing that's created the G4 rather than the 3 is of course the GoPro Hero 4. Now the Hero 4 differs from the Hero 3 in the sense that the silver version has a touchscreen. Now one of the big problems and one of the things that people are often asking me in my other Feiyu-Tech handheld gimbal reviews is how can I actually see the image out of the camera. With the Hero 3s, obviously the only way that you could do it was to add the backpack, the LCD backpack. The problem being that of course that would add additional width to the camera and it would actually make it impossible to fit in any of these gimbals, as they were specifically designed and weighted to fit just the camera, so no backpacks in there. When the Hero 4 came out, GoPro, somewhat surprisingly, decided to make the silver model with an integrated touchscreen. Now this, from a handheld point of view, was absolutely fantastic because it meant that you could frame your shots and you'd be able to see out of it. The problem with the G3 Ultra, of course, is that it was created slightly before this came out, and as you can see, the screen on the back of it is somewhat obliterated by the IMU and the cradle mount. So that was one thing that gave Feiyu-Tech the opportunity to do something about that. What we'll do is we'll delve in now and we'll have a look inside the box and we'll see what differences there are between the various versions. Okay, so let's take a look inside the box. Now the first thing that should be mentioned is of course this is just a sample box that they've sent me. I'm sure the internals are the same, but you're obviously going to get a box that looks a little bit more spruced up and a bit more kind of logoed up from Feiyu-Tech than this. However, it's the contents that we care about. Okay, so standard solid packaging, as you can see, it's all nice and snug in there, keeps everything tight, it's not going to be moving about in shipping, which is good. Okay, so let's just pull all the contents out and see what we've got inside there. So we have got what looks to be a USB, USB 2 battery charger there. We have got 4, and they are, I'll just pull that into view. They are IMR 18350 900 milliamp 3.7, I believe, lithium ion batteries. So we've actually got 4 of those, but we've got a charger that only does 2, which is interesting. Obviously the G3 Ultra has 3 working batteries, and it actually has a charger that comes with only 2 ports, so you can't actually charge all 3 at the same time, which is always a bit of a frustration. However, anyway, let's just continue with the stuff. So we've got a little 2-prong international USB adapter. That's obviously for me going to need to go into a UK plug. However, I do have one available to me. It doesn't seem to be one in the box here. There's another European adapter, but it's not any good for me in this country, but no problem there, I can sort that out. You get a standard micro USB to USB cable. That's obviously for the charging of things, and then you also get the Feiyu-Tech USB to TTL. This is basically for your firmware. It terminates in a micro USB which plugs straight into the gimbal, and that's how you actually get your firmware updates, and you can change your settings and things like that on it. So there are all those components. And now let's pull the actual gimbal out of the box. I'm just going to slide this piece of foam out, and there we have the Feiyu-Tech G4 handheld gimbal. So let me just get this box out of the way and we will take a look and give it some comparisons to the G3 Ultra. Okay, so with it out of the box, the first thing that I've done, as you can see, is I've mounted my Hero 4 Silver to the gimbal. So this gives us an indication of what it's going to look like that. Now again, this is an unboxing video, and I'm going to use it for just really comparing, looking at the exterior, the aesthetics, the differences between the G3 Ultra and the G4, the review, the functionality, testing, all of that is going to come at a later date with full tests, firmware updates, everything that I've done for all the other gimbals that I've tested, we'll be doing for the G4. So let's bring in its younger brother, sorry, older brother. There we go. That is the G3 Ultra that you've got on the left, and you've got the G4 on the right. Now the first thing that you can immediately see, I'll just move that up slightly so it's just a little bit better in shot, is the length. Now, getting a tape measure out here, if I go between the top of the motor to the base, we have got around about 175 millimeters, I would say, on the G4, whereas before we had about just over, I'd say probably about 195 millimeters. So there's basically 2 centimeter difference in the actual height of the gimbals. Now the reason for that is that the G3 Ultra used 3 batteries, whereas the G4 only uses 2. It's going to be quite an interesting test when it comes down to the functionality, because it may mean that there's slightly less battery life. Again, I'm going to do a test on that. I'm sure I'll do a time lapse or something like that to see how long it lasts out by just holding it steady. But yeah, so the G3 Ultra used to have 3 batteries. It was supplied with 4. The charger would do 2, but it would use 3. So it was a little bit awkward from that point of view, because if you wanted to have 2 sets of batteries, you had to buy an extra set. If you wanted to charge them all at the same time, then you had to get that. I think they may, and I stand to be corrected here, I think they may have come out with a charger that would actually do 3 batteries eventually, but certainly when I did it originally, and the charger that came with it, it only would do 2. With the G4, everything's changed. I've got the 2 battery charger, I've got 4 batteries that come with it, which means that I've got 2 sets basically. So all you got to do is slot the 2 batteries in, power it up, use it as much as you want, and you've got a spare set to use. So the other comparisons, let's just grab the G3 Ultra again. Main things to look at here, the cables. As you can see, the cables come out of the housing, they go up, they go through, they go round, and they're all routed. As you see, they're all designed so you can spin the camera around without them snagging. However, from the point of view of transport, they do get in the way a little bit, and there is always that danger that you're going to snag them, rip them, cause problems. The other thing to notice is the little stopper bar, which will actually prevent the gimbal moving in certain extents too far. That's in there. Now, if we then compare that to the new G4, you will see, or won't see, any cables whatsoever. They've completely done away with the cables, they've completely done away with the exterior stopper bar. It's a really nice, smooth, sleek design. Really sort of neat and compact. So there's nothing to snag, there's no issues there, there's nothing to get in the way of anything. It's just a nice clean design. Now the other thing that is noticeable as part of this is that the motor housings in the G3 Ultra had a little hole. There's a little pinhole there. This has been going since the days of the G3, and there's also a little pinhole on the back one here, just there, and there's a little pinhole on the back one here, just there. Now inside that hole is an LED, and that LED would give you an indication of things like firmware updates. It would also, in the later firmware, give you an indication of battery life. Now interestingly, picking up the G4 doesn't have any holes. There's no hole there, there's no hole there, and there's just one there. There we go. So there is still the indicator, but interestingly they've removed them from the other 2. Now whether the LEDs are still in there, if they're the same motors, they probably are, then that's no problem. But basically, so we've got one LED indicator on the bottom of it, unfortunately a bit shadowed there, but that's where the LED is. So that's going to give us the indication of how much battery life is in there and the state of play of the gimbal if you're using firmware updates and things like that. Other than that, the other thing to notice, the way that the camera fixes in, thumb screws on the G4 are at the front, thumb screws on the G3 were at the back, so slight change there. And of course the key difference with the G4 is that on the back you've got a nice cutout for your Hero 4 silver screen, so you can see the full screen on the back there. The other thing that you will notice is there is no IMU, so there used to be a big lumpy block which is shown here. So that big lumpy block which says QC passed on it, that's actually the IMU for the camera. So that was one of the things that was kind of registering where the camera was, whether it was level, things like that. If you move that around, so if you unscrewed it and moved it around, it would make your motors go all over the place. So interestingly, that is actually not even on the rear plate here. Now whether it's inside there, whether it's inside one of the motors, quite interesting how they've actually managed to get that in there. But again, really nice sleek design. So great for storage, great for not getting any damage to it, and obviously functionality, again, that's going to be the real test. Whether or not they're different motors, I'm not entirely sure. I haven't actually got that information as yet, but there does seem to be, it feels like there's a lot more movement. It feels like there's a lot more kind of ability to rotate, so the blocks, the internal blocks, there's a lot less of that in this. You can see I can almost flip that camera, I can do 180 and then I can go another sort of certainly 45 maybe, but it's got quite a lot of free play, whereas if we actually pick up the G3 Ultra, so this would go all the way back and stop, but then it would hit there. So there's actually a degree, if we just put them side by side, so as you can see this will actually go not just there, that's interesting. So there's probably the same rotation, but the rotation is slightly different. So this will actually go to a steeper angle this way round and this one won't, whereas this one will go further in this direction, whereas this one won't. So so yeah, interesting. The feel of the motors, again, you know, these feel a little bit smoother. I can feel that the magnetic notches are a little bit less, so a little bit less resistance maybe. Again, it's going to be proved in the review, which we will do at another time. Okay, so that pretty much covers the aesthetics of it. Now the other thing that's worth mentioning on the G4 is one of the accessories that Feiyu-Tech came out with was this chap here, the extension pole. All it is a nice lightweight 3K carbon fibre pole with some aluminium threads top and bottom. So there's a thread here and there's an internal thread here, so you can actually put another one on the bottom of it and you can kind of daisy chain and couple them together. The idea is that you screw this into the bottom of the gimbal and then you can extend it, so you've got a nice long pole. The way you have to do that on the G3 Ultra is you had to buy the accessory here, the switch, and you would screw that into the bottom of it. That would then give you the ability to turn it on. You turn it on once you're happy that it's all ready and up and running, then you'd screw it into the bottom there. Again, you'd have to buy the pole and you'd also have to buy the switch. The G4 comes with the switch already integrated, so the switch does exactly what the switch did, which is click it on and it turns on. However, you can see there's the internal threads there, and all you do, once you've turned the gimbal on, you simply just screw in the pole, or two poles. Feiyu-Tech recommend you don't go more than two poles, but there's nothing from the point of view of physics other than that stopping you. And yeah, and then you've got your gimbal screwed in there, so that's all built in there, so you don't have to buy the extra switch on top, and that gives you that little bit more reach than before. So that's really the overview and the unboxing all sorted. Again, the real key is going to be to do the review, to get out there, do some test footage, put them side by side, see whether or not the functionality differs, see what the horizon looks like, see whether or not there's any glitches, bugs. One thing that I've always liked about Feiyu-Tech is that they tend to produce a product that I wouldn't say always works 100% every time, first time, but they continually update from firmware. They've been very good at listening to me when I come back to them and say, you know, I've noticed a bit of roll drift, or I know a few people who have commented on, you know, vibrations, things like that. Then they will try their best, if possible, to actually do something about it through firmware updates. So very good from that point of view. So yeah, if you're interested in seeing the functionality of it once I've actually got it all up and running and powered up, then stay tuned and I will try and get a video review done by Christmas, if not before.